Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Stories That Inspire Us, the author series. Oh my gosh, I have an amazing author on today. Before I formally introduce her, I have to show you her book. And as people know, I love my stickies. I had to take the stickies out because I just had way too many in there and I couldn't find the things that I was looking for. Anyways, the name of her book, Living Out Loud, Design Your Life of Unlimited Possibilities. And really, this book has come as such a monumental time, in my opinion. I am so excited to welcome to the Stories Podcast, Angela Wilson. Welcome to the Stories Podcast.
Thanks so much, Janice. I'm so glad to be here. And yeah, writing this book was amazing. It really was.
When I received this book, first of all, I love the color of the book, the design of it. It's very simple but elegant, and the colors are just stunning and beautiful. And when I looked at it, I thought, there's a story within the story.
Mm-hmm.
And as I started to read the book, it occurred to me that a lot of times, especially as women, perhaps we don't have the courage to live out loud, to live our true, authentic selves.
Yeah, that's very true. And that's why I decided to write the book. My life has taken many turns, none of which I regret, because it's brought me to this special place where I am now in my life and getting to do exactly what I love to do, which is fantastic. And that's what I want my readers, plus my clients that I work with, to really go after that life, the one that they love, the one of their heart's desire.
And I love that because, of course, not only are you the author of this book, but you are a speaker, a coach, and a mentor specifically for women, and also a designated accountant. Wow.
Thanks. And, it's really from all of those experiences that I have the wisdom, knowledge, and experience to be able to assist my clients. And it was so important for me to write this book. And I want to step back just a second because you mentioned the cover. So the cover actually is an original piece of artwork that was done for me by a very talented artist named Kathy Dickinson. She lives in the UK. And when I had the vision of this book, I immediately went, I need a piece of Kathy's artwork on this cover. And so that's where that started from.
And thank you so much for sharing that, because I just felt that there was such a personal connection for you to this cover to the cover art of your book.
Yeah.
And the colors are monumental, but you know what is even more, you really wrote this obviously from a very personal perspective, through different situations that you've been through your life. When did you feel, because, of course, starting this third podcast, Stories That Inspire Us, I was, of course, inspired by my son's journey. And when did it occur to you, and I think this is so interesting, that your story was worth telling?
I think, we all have a story, and we decide if we have the courage to stand up and let everybody else know. And I really, so from my point of view, when I decided that I would do this, I had an inkling earlier in my life that this is something that I might want to do, but I was always told that I couldn't, that I wasn't good at English. I wasn't good at writing. When you read the book, you'll read that, one Christmas, I was told that I was going to be given a bucket of commas for Christmas because I was such a horrible writer. And what I realized then a little bit later on in my life, is I took a creative writing class with a dear friend of mine. She encouraged me to go with her. And all of a sudden I found out, oh, maybe I'm not as horrible as I thought, because I was so in that mindset, and mindset plays such a huge role in everything in our life. And so it's fascinating then fast forward to about 2 years ago right now. And I was taking a book writing course with a very talented editor and book coach, Susan Crossman of Crossman Communications. And she, after I took the book writing course with her, she said, Angela, what are you doing? She said, you should be writing this story. And I went, oh yeah, one day. She goes, no. She said, really think about this. And we had a very personal, in-depth conversation. And I went, you know what, the time is now. People need to hear that they can live out loud. They can live as their authentic self. And we're not here to play small. And I was playing small by keeping my story to a very few people around me. And instead, I decided, no, it's really time to shine my light and let other people, because I believe when we drop a pebble into the water, it ripples out. It's the same as our conversations and our stories, is when we decide to put them out there in the world, it then ripples out for other people to then go, okay, maybe I can do that, or maybe I can stick my toe just in a little bit of that. And it taps into their inner courage. And I always say I'm a champion for women's courage, 100%. That's why I was put on this planet in this time. That's for sure.
Wow. And thank you so much for describing that, because I really had a vision come to me of you doing just that. Like, I see you perhaps sitting across the desk from your book coach, wherever it was, but then going out and seeing the water and dipping your toe in and seeing the ripple effect. And at that moment, to sit down and start writing your book, what was that like? Because I know for a lot of people, it can be very overwhelming. And, I am a published author. I've co-authored, 15, 16 projects. And honestly, I'm dragging my feet writing my own book. I freely admit that. But what was it like after you had that discussion with your coach and you sit down at your computer, perhaps, or maybe it's just pad and paper, and you start writing your book?
It was interesting. So I went through a bit of a process with my book coach to get me started and to get the structure, the vision that I really had of the book. And once I had that vision, I started. And I didn't go 100% chapter by chapter, but I almost did go chapter by chapter to write the book. From the standpoint of, I had a very distinct vision of the way my story needed to be told, so that you could see this is where I was, but this is where you can go. Mm-hmm. And that was really important to me. And there were times where I would be like, oh, am I going to get this done? But there was always something that was pulling me forward, that now is the time to get this out into the world so other people can read it. And hopefully, even if there's one or two nuggets that just inspire you to take an action step. I'm a firm believer that once you take one action step, then you'll take another and another, and they exponentiate on themselves. And so that was really what it was about. And, it's fascinating because it is, when you're writing a book such that I wrote, that is a personal story, you're being very vulnerable out into the world. And so it did take tapping into my courage and strength to go ahead and do it. And it's funny because the writing process, that wasn't really as big of a problem. It was when I got into, okay, now I got to do all of the fine tuning stuff behind the scenes. And it's that, okay, I got to get all this stuff to the publisher, and I need to do this and I need to do that. That's kind of more in my process where I got not bogged down, but it just felt a little more arduous for me. And it's fascinating because I think it was about 2 days before my book was published out into the world, like released. My husband said to me, he goes, well, it's going to be out there now. And I went, yep, it is. And that was kind of, I went, but I'm okay with that because, again, I know that I'm here to assist other women to live the life that they're here to live, and to stop hiding into the shadows and stop buying into the old stories, and to really be them.
Wow. And as you were describing the courage and the strength, it really, in my opinion, does take that courage and strength where we kind of step into what we are meant to do, without, and maybe those limiting beliefs may have been like trying to creep in, but you own that in a time, in a manner that, I got to get this done, come on, let's get this going. I think that is phenomenal. What would you say to somebody listening about having the courage and strength to really live out loud, like to grasp that moment?
It's really about tapping into that inner courage. And sometimes what that takes is having people around us that can actually see us for who we are when we can't. And, that was one of the things when my journey really shifted and I needed to really figure out who I was because I'd completely forgotten who I was. That's one of the things I did was I invested in myself, and I had a mentor, and I took the time to really tap into who I am. And it's a process. And I think one of the things that we tend to fall down on sometimes is that we go, okay, let's just get fixed. None of us are broken. And this is a journey. And so it's about taking the steps on the journey and really choosing you and choosing to live the life that you want to live. Because we can all continue to struggle through life. That's a given. That's a story that is out there, that life is supposed to be hard and that, we're meant to work hard and blah, blah, and you're not meant to play anymore when you're an adult. Yes, you are. We're meant to play even more because we have to undo all the things that happened before, from being that little, I call it my sparkly little 3-year-old, to, all those learnings that went on. So deal with a trusted mentor. Not all of us, and I mentioned this in the book, not all of us have somebody like that in our life. And so at that time I didn't. And so that's why I went out and searched for community and a mentor. I have that support in my life now, but it's one of those things that as you're finding yourself, you really need champions of who you are to help you.
That is so true. And I couldn't agree with you more. And part of your story, and I haven't read the whole book, I've read most of it. And when you were describing when you found this community that it was like a women's networking type of group. And when you felt that, oh my gosh, should I share my story? Like, what should I do? But you shared it. And then you also shared when somebody came up to you and thanked you for sharing your story. That is the power of sharing your story. And I felt like I was a cheerleader for you in that moment. Like, yes, this is, I could see the progression. And I just think that's phenomenal.
Well, thank you. And I want to, what I would like to say about that is, we don't know who we impact with our words and our stories, because it may not be the person that's right in front of you. By writing a book like this, I don't know who it's impacted or who it hasn't, but I have to tell you this. A lovely lady that I know that I lost touch with for a little while, just because, life gets busy and what have you. And I got the most amazing note from her the other day that said, I've been watching everything that you're doing on Facebook, on Instagram, and you have so inspired me to get back out into the world. Thank you so much. And this is somebody I haven't spoken to in probably 2 years, probably since, before the world went a little crazy. And so to have that reaffirmed back to me, it reminds me to keep using my voice, to keep living out loud, and because it's all about being of love and assistance for me. Yeah.
And by the way, that was very beautiful. I love how you described that. And it really goes to show the depth of the who, where, what, when, why, and how you wrote your book. The other thing I love about your book is you, at the end of each chapter, you have keys, like almost like a takeaway. But this is, I've never seen this in the book, and I may have to use this when I eventually write my own book, is you have a QR code. And when you place the QR code on there, it goes to your YouTube channel, and you share some more inspiration from that channel. Genius. I just absolutely love that, because you're reading the chapter, you're really becoming involved with your story and how that, affected your life. And then you get to hear directly from you.
Yeah. That was actually one of my publishers, Spotlight Publishing, Becky Norwood. That was one of her suggestions for me, because it is such a personal story. And it is, something that, to hear it from in my own voice, in my words, we thought would be impactful for the reader. And I loved it because it gave me an opportunity to, flush the points out a little bit more that were in the chapter.
I love that. And, I have to ask before I forget, are you thinking about writing a second book?
It's funny because everybody asks me that, and yes, there will be. There's a few more books in me, and it's just a matter of timing. I wanted to get this one out and really out into the world, and then, in the probably not too distant future, I'm sure we'll be hearing from me again.
Oh, that is wonderful. Now, I want to chat a little bit about your business, Angela Unlimited. Can you share with our viewers and listeners how that all came about?
So Angela Unlimited really came about from a very dark time in my life. I had a long-term relationship end that was a very unhealthy relationship. And I had no idea who I was when I came out of it. And I used to, once a week, I would stop and get a latte at Starbucks on my way to a client's office. And this one particular morning, I pulled into a parking spot instead of the drive-through. And I actually sat there and cried because I didn't know if I could afford a latte. Now, at that time, I had a very successful accounting business, still do. And it was that, but I couldn't see beyond where I was in that time. And it was really about what started going through my head was, okay, like I have a business. I can pull myself out of this. Like, what do other women do? How do they get through this? I don't want any other woman to have to go through this. I don't want them to feel this way coming into it. I want them to be like, I really want them to be empowered when they're in a horrible spot like this in their life, if they have to go through it. And I actually set that aside because I had to figure out who I was. So I set it aside for a number of years. And then in about 2016, my husband and I were in Spain. And I said, I've been having this thought come back. And he goes, okay, tell me about it. And so I described it all to him. And he went, it's what you're here to do. And I went, you're right. This is what I'm here to do. So I started steps then to start moving in this direction. And I still have a few accounting clients, but I have my coaching practice where I really assist women to transform their relationship with money so they can transform their life and start living the life of their heart's desire. That's what we're here for. And the reason I start with money is because nobody wants to talk about that. I always tease when I'm talking in front of a group of women. Women would far rather tell me what goes on in their bedroom than they do anything about money, because it's even a more taboo subject. And so, but it's one of those things that's so important because it has such power over us. And when we can take that power out of it and just have it be a friend in our life or a tool in our life, whatever, whichever way you want to look at it, but just to have it just simply there as a part of your life, then you can move forward and you can do some amazing things, and you can actually start going after your dreams, because now your dreams can live in your money where they need to live, because most of our dreams need to be financed in some fashion.
That is so true. And it's about really having that healthy relationship. And, I remember when my parents started teaching me, for instance, about money, I'm kind of from the old school with the, put the money in the envelopes.
Yep.
That works for me. I mean, yes, I do have a savings account, but, think about the exchange of energy with money. The more money we make, the more we can impact others' lives as well, and while fueling our own dreams.
Absolutely. And that's, for me, one of my passions is philanthropy. And I do support a number of not-for-profit organizations, because they're doing amazing work. And, and it goes to my heart. So I work with women, but my overarching goal with working with women is truly that every little girl on this planet can be educated, and in addition to that, can live by their own story and be 100% their authentic selves their entire life. And they don't have to go through any of the doubt and fear and shame and everything else that most of the rest of us women went through at some period in our life. And there's a large percentage that are still in that spot in their life. And that's what I want to shift, so those little girls don't have to do any of this.
Wow. Now I want to go back to, for a moment, when you were sitting in your car, and that moment, because I think that's a very poignant moment where you're like, holy shit, like, what am I going to do here? Like, how can I take a breath? How can I regain my composure, my relationship with money, without feeling icky about it? Because, as you mentioned, it is such a taboo subject. What have you learned since then that perhaps always comes up for other women?
So what I really learned since that, so again, as you said, I'm a designated accountant, so I'm a CPA. So I had the educational background to be able to take care of my clients, like pretty pink bow all wrapped up on top of it, no problems. But in my personal life, in my home, money was a mess, because I didn't have the mindset, because I was too mired in the fear and the shame and the doubt. And I was telling myself a lot, but I was also hearing a lot of how I wasn't very smart because I was the accountant. I didn't have everything handled and blah, 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 blah. And so when we get into that mindset, that's what creates the problem. So, at that pivotal time, I had to really decide, okay, how am I going to move forward? And it did not happen overnight. And that's the other thing that is so important. It takes years for these stories to build inside of us. It's going to take a bit of time. There's some you can release right away, absolutely, but it's going to take a bit of time to be able to release the rest of them. And it's really about stopping the stories that we've heard. And that's how we start taking the charge out of money. The stories like, we don't talk about money. That was one that I heard growing up all the time. You don't talk about money. It's rude. Never, ever do you. And the other one that I always heard was, you never, ever owe anyone anything. You don't have the money, you do without completely. And, it's fascinating. So what that did for me as a woman in my mid 20s towards 30, coming out of university with student loans. Okay, I owed money. And then not long after that, I had a mortgage. And so because of all the stories that I'd heard about not measuring up and not being good enough, I took that on like, oh, here I am. I can't do this right either. So then it was really about figuring out what I wanted my story to be and how I wanted to live my life. And that's really where it became. And the other thing because my voice had been so squelched in that period of my life, when I was coming out the other side of it, it was really about, all of a sudden, it was like I could not be, like, I couldn't keep myself quiet anymore. And I just started, I started asking questions, and I started asking questions of like all different places that in the past I would have never asked questions in a million years. Like I would ask questions of friends, of my parents that I would have never asked before. And I had like these open, frank conversations that obviously were in me to come out, but because they had been so stuffed down, they couldn't come out before that. And so what I really learned was, first of all, money needs to be in your conversation. Money's part of the conversation all the time. And the other thing that has to live in your conversation are your dreams. Your dreams need to live in your conversation, because once they start living in your conversation, then steps will come into your life to be able to take in order for you to achieve them. And I always say I have two great examples about that. The one that I'll give, and actually they're not really tied, but I'd always wanted to go on a safari to Tanzania, to like photography safari. And I knew that in my former life, that was not going to happen because just of the situation that it was. And that person had no interest in doing that kind of travel. And so I was like, okay, fine. So I just went, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this. But then when my life changed, I had said it out loud a couple of times. And then I was having dinner with my nephew, Daniel, and he goes, Annie A. He goes, didn't you say that you want to go to Tanzania? And I said, well, yeah. And he goes, well, why can't you? And I went, well, and he goes, I think you can if you just decide. And I thought, oh, well, you're a pretty smart kid. Thank you very much. And so him and I would have conversations about it. And then I started talking to I just had it kind of come in a conversation of, this is something I'd really like to do. And lo and behold, I was part of the Toronto Camera Club at that time, shortly after that. And the opportunity came up that I could go to Tanzania with the Toronto Camera Club. And of course, my first instinct was, oh my gosh, I can't afford this. I found the money. And then, because at that time I was still trying to like keep myself in a spot, right? And also what ended up happening was I did the, oh, okay, I can do this. And then I went to a meeting and they said, oh, you have to have like 3 cameras and you have to blah, blah, blah. And so like, I'm driving home and I call my sister, and I said like, oh my gosh, like I can't do this. And she said, Angela, calm down. Yes, you can. You have a DSLR, you have a point and shoot, and you have your phone. That's 3 cameras. And I went, oh. And it was enough to let my brain click, because sometimes all you need is somebody to say, well, what about? And your brain can make the shift. That's what's important. And it's also being open to other possibilities.
Oh my gosh, I just got the chills when you said that, because shift happens when we allow ourselves to take in fully what we want, like take that dream in. Oh, I can't do it because of this. I can't do it because of that. So you went from Angela Limited to Angela Unlimited.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's really, what the book is all about. It's coming into the world as that sparkly little 3-year-old that absolutely knew no limits at all, was like the chatty, and was always being told like, zip it, like be quiet, kind of thing. But I didn't know anything different. So I was, and then I learned. And then all of a sudden I had no voice, and I literally would speak when I was spoken to. And that was pretty much it. And then to come out the other side, and here I am with you, and, and I'm doing speaking, and I wrote a book, and so it's that my message is, I could do this. I know everybody else can too. It's when we get to that spot that we choose. And it's about choosing. And lots of times people will say to me, but I don't really have that choice. And I say, well, staying where you are, that's a choice as well. It's up to you.
And I think Angela, too, also goes back to, when we were describing like hard things, sometimes I think in a lot of situations, we make them harder on ourselves. It's almost like we're trying to justify our behavior to match our reality when, okay, there can be different hards, but maybe here's your hard, here's the different hards, choose your hard wisely.
Yeah. And it really goes to about, we can't change our past. We really can't. And I always tell my clients, every day, you're a different person than you were the day before. Because you've gained wisdom and experience from that day. So you get to show up the next day as a different version of you. So why not choose to go into each day as the best version of you and just keep leveling up? That's what we're here to do. It's that journey of listening to ourselves, our inner knowing, and really going after what we really truly desire and being very clear, very crystal clear on what it is that we really want. I always get my clients to, because I talk a lot about dreams with my clients, and it's always about, that big, let's go after the big scary one, because the one that you know how to get to, okay, that's already coming. Let's go after that big one. And it's really like, I get them to envision it in such detail, right down to the smells that are outside. Can you feel your feet walking on the grass, or is it cobblestones, or what is it? What are the sounds that you can hear? What colors can you see? How do you feel? What's the feeling you get when you're there? Like, it's all that type of thing, right? Because it's when you can invoke that kind of feeling and passion, now you have fuel, and that fuel moves you towards your dreams.
So true. And I love how you describe that. And, owning your story in such a way where you are in your life right now to inspire others. When you first received your book, what did it feel like to hold your book in your hands?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I have the very first copy that I held in my hands right here. This was the very first copy that I took out of the box. And I remember sitting there and I was like this. And then I looked at the cover, and actually I'm getting goosebumps as I'm telling you this. And it was that, oh my gosh, I did this. And I was told that I could never do this. And here I am. And I'm so excited. And it was excitement at that point. I was just like, I was like a little 3-year-old again, going, oh my gosh, this is actually mine. This is mine. And so I made sure to, write a little note in the front of this book saying that this is the very first one that I held, and that it was published on November the 9th, 2022. And so that it's that momentum of something that, I took on and I accomplished. And it's interesting because for me, one of those things, which I would do a lot in the past, is I go, oh yeah, but it doesn't really mean much. No, this does. This really does. It took a lot of courage. It took a lot of strength. It took a lot of, I'm going to say, tenacity to really put the words on the page, and to be vulnerable, and to allow other people in, and to allow people to really help me. And, it's interesting because that was one of the things that my book coach said to me. She said, Angela, every single author, and she's an author herself, every single author needs an editor. She said, I have an editor. Why wouldn't you have an editor? That's not your job. And I went, you're right. And it reminded me again of, we all have our own area of genius. And when we stay in that area of genius, that's when life is really what I call yummy and magical, because we're living on our purpose. We're living what we're here to do. It's when we start, like, you know, dipping our hands, our feet, and sometimes jumping into the pool of everything that's not our genius. That's when things feel hard. It's because we're doing all the things we're not here to do, that somebody else is here to do that. Let them do that, us do us. And then all of a sudden, now everybody is on this, you know, plane of being on their purpose. And that's what we're here to do.
So true, to be living in your purpose and to write really from a personal level, your story in a way that honors your journey.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I just want to segue over for just a moment and welcome everyone currently on the Wisdom Audio app. Thank you so much for being here today. Angela, before we sign off, can you let us know how our viewers and listeners can connect with you further?
Absolutely. So you can go to my website, which is www.angelaunlimited.com. And actually the keys that you referred to that are in the book, there is a downloadable version of the keys there. All you have to do is click on the link. And there's also a button there that you can purchase the book as well. You can find me on Facebook. If you just search under Angela Unlimited, you can find me there. On LinkedIn, same handle. You can find me under Angela Unlimited, and Instagram is the same. Oh, sorry, Instagram is the same, which is Angela Unlimited, and LinkedIn you'll find me under Angela Wilson.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And of course, I will make sure all that information is in the show notes. Are you living out loud? Are you living to your true potential? Because your story, there's somebody out there waiting to hear your story, as evidenced by the note, of course, that Angela received from a friend from 2 years ago. This is such an amazing book. I highly recommend that you buy it. It is such an amazing read, so inspirational. And these are the stories that inspire us. My name is Janice Melillo, the host of Stories, the author series. Today, I was inspired, continue to be inspired by Angela Wilson, Living Out Loud. Thank you so much, everyone. Remember, your story is important and needs to be shared. Thank you so much, and we shall see you again real soon. Bye for now.